So being at 11:45, I think, I'm sure a few more people will be joining us shortly, but
Sure,
just
a couple minutes.
make sure everybody knows the meeting is being recorded, and I'm gonna, send it to our guests today, Chris Feamster and Richard Schreiber. They have been with us since very much the beginning, and they do great work over on the East Coast, and I'll let them introduce themselves, what they do, and if you have any questions, raise your hand or jump in. We're very informal in these meetings, and otherwise, it's all yours.
Awesome.
All right. Well, speaking of assistant, we're seeing if we could get a colleague to jump in and help us with the presentation. But no worries. Let's start off with some introductions. Real quick, I am Chris Feamster with Cognify Solutions, part of Nexus Systems. Cognify Solutions' mission has been to ensure that with the amazing technology that generative AI is, that it is stewarded well, because with any amazing technology, we have to be careful how we use such things. It's never a reason to shy away from it. It's never a reason to poo-poo innovation, but it's a reason to be more intentional about it. And that's part of our mission here, to ensure that AI is used with intentionality and in tandem with human agency, and not as repetitive. We find that to be a moral imperative. And without too much additional ado, because I'm sure I could prattle on about that all day, I will shortly. I want to introduce you to my colleague, partner, and brother from another mother, Richard Schreiber.
Well, we both have the same father, that we know, and that's the good Lord. And you'll find, I think, anchored in our values is to use AI in a faith-based manner, and that it is a moral objective and a moral responsibility to build governance in with any kind of AI application. So I am the founder of Law Firm AI Expert, which helps small to medium-sized law firms, particularly women-led law firms, use agentic AI and automations to give themselves back time in their businesses, that they can hopefully record more billable hours, or even spend more time with their kids, or whatever that chooses to be. I'm also a partner in Cognify, because as I said earlier, anyone providing AI agentic solutions of any kind, governance has to be built in from the ground up, from the ingrained within the total infrastructure. So happy to be here to co-present. Love this group and love your mission, and completely compatible with ours for certain. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. I think I will be running our presentation right now as well. So it'll be one moment and I will get that pulled up. Maybe we want to give a quick introduction to everybody else in the room, that may be able to tailor a couple of points, and when we get to Q&A, we may be able to make sure we have some things teed up.
Yeah, let me go ahead and take care of that while you work on getting the presentation ready and everything. I'll just go by the order that I see people on the screen, and at the top I see D'Souza.
Hi, let me turn my camera on. I was munching on my lunch a little bit, so I turned it off for a minute. Ratan D'Souza with Bob Evans Restaurants, CIO here since May of 2020, and was introduced to this group several months ago by Angela Mazzocco when we met for lunch once. So pleasure to meet you all.
Awesome. Jim Hayes.
Good afternoon. Well, good morning, I guess still. Jim Hayes. I run a fractional CTO and IT consulting company. I have an extensive background in data center infrastructure and data center design build, including AI impact on infrastructure and things like that. So,
awesome. Thank you, Todd.
Todd Henley. I do AI and information governance, and very much aligned with Cognify. Morning.
Awesome. Hammond.
Hi, this is Hemant Swarup. I do AI and data actually consulting.
Awesome. Gordon.
Hi, folks. Gordon Withrow. I'm a digital transformation consultant. I've been doing a lot of work with AI, some natural language processing work, as well as I'm doing some research on embodied AI for what's coming.
Great. Dave.
Hey guys, Dave Cherry here. I'm an executive advisor on the topics of customer experience, analytics, and innovation. Apologies for not being on camera today. I'm in transport here, so appreciate the opportunity to listen in.
Great. Adrian.
Hello. Adrian, I run a landscaping company here in Columbus, but also working on some technology to help cities and architecture, engineering, landscape design firms work with the city easier.
Great. And then last but not least, SJ.
Thank you. I'm SJ. I'm a known futurist. My solutions that I offer for B2B and B2C all are at the intersection of workplace culture and people strategy, and future work and future education trends. Many of them, including AI, also sit at that intersection. So imagine 4 little ovals and a picture of me in the middle. Thank you.
Awesome. And I see Cognify Deck. I assume that is your assistant, but we'll go ahead and get rolling.
Yes, rolling stone gathers no moss.
Indeed. All right. So, without further ado, I want to welcome you to this presentation where we're going to discuss stewardship, truth, and the AI gap. The title of this is a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek nod to something John mentioned, where you challenged me to leave you all barefoot and blown away. Well, I like to take that literally. Barefoot, not because we're relaxed, but because we're standing on ground that keeps shifting beneath us. We're living through the first epidemic of manufactured uncertainty. When half of Americans tell Pew they're more concerned than excited about AI's growing role, and 76% say it's critical to know whether content was made by AI or humans, but 53% lack confidence that they can tell the difference, we're not facing a technology problem. We're facing a truth problem. And only by understanding the real truth of a matter can we have any credibility to address it. So, I would consider this an epistemological crisis. We have lost the ability to know what we're looking at, not through negligence, but through design. AI is being deployed as invisible infrastructure, while trust requires visible provenance. Here at Cognify and at Nexus, the credo that guides our work is simple. Only by understanding the real truth can we address it. Not through ensuring that we not by giving too much credibility to marketing, though it is what it is. But I do want to strip away that marketing gloss and examine that real truth of the AI trust gap and what it means for small to medium businesses who are adopting AI at unprecedented rates, while their customers demand transparency that they cannot provide. Here on the consumer side, the real data reality. Pew's June 2025 data gives us the consumer side of this rupture, of this split. Half of Americans, are are more concerned than excited about AI's daily encroachment. 76% demand the right to know whether they're looking at AI-generated content or human creation. Yet, 53% admit they cannot reliably distinguish between them. This isn't a skills gap. This is an epistemic sovereignty gap. This is a gap in the customer's ability to know what they're looking at, which means they lost the ability to choose. And that loss of agency is precisely what creates a trust vacuum that frameworks like AIFAs are designed to fill. And we want to speak on that. Now let's bring this on to the SMB side among small businesses. Again, the data reality. If we look at this, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce research has showed that small business AI adoption more than doubled in 2023 and 2025, from 23% to 58%. However, there's still a key friction here. There's still a tension here. 65% of those same businesses worry about navigating a complex, uneven patchwork of AI and privacy rules, and only 31% feel prepared to comply with the proposed AI regulations. So there's a collision here. Customers demand transparency. Great, of course they do. However, SMBs are deploying AI at a scale without the governance infrastructure to provide it. This result is the AI trust gap, a chasm between expectation and reality that threatens to swallow brand credibility whole. And we've seen a lot of that happen. So let's actually push into that. Let's give that some integrity, some intentionality. This is a philosophical disconnect. There's a quiet assumption in most AI marketing. The more invisible AI is, the better. Frictionless, seamless, magic. However, this is exactly backwards for trust. AI adoption is being driven by invisibility goals, while trust is built on transparency requirements. You can optimize for convenience, or you can optimize for accountability. You cannot optimize for both without lying to someone. Again, we want to keep pointing out and endorse AIFA's mission, and organizations like this, because they're emerging here because this gap has become intolerable in the marketplace. The more hype we see among the tech bro community, among AI vendors, the more intractable, the more resistant, the more frustrated a lot of end users are going to be. And if that reaches a certain tipping point, then what's really the point of some of the business that we're doing if the very consumers that we're trying to serve find our behavior intolerable? So let's start getting it a little bit more into the importance of the frameworks around this and start to make some of this real. So I want to, again, point out something that is going to speak to a framework that we want to talk about. The frameworks around identification, watermarking, things like this, they're not checkboxes. They're the technical architecture for preserving human agency in an automated world. We share that conviction here at Cognify with all of you folks. Transparency is not a constraint on innovation. It's the foundation. Now, as we start to make some of this real, I want to go and allow my colleague to take the floor. All right. So as we start to talk about what real governance and stewardship looks like.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. So from governance to stewardship, governance sounds like paperwork, right? Sarbanes-Oxley, we've all been down that path. Stewardship, however, sounds like a covenant. There's an element of ongoing care, or moral accountability, as I said earlier. You shouldn't be hawking AI solutions unless you have AI governance and guardrails built from the ground up and are serious about not only providing that as part of your offering, but educating, as Chris pointed out, there's a gross negligence and lack of education, I think, in the proper ways to use AI in the enterprise, small, medium, or large. And that education process, as he articulated it, is so critical. So we're not here to build more checklists, check the boxes. We're here to build vineyards that last. Although we know the analogy that, what does it take, 7 years for the vineyard to create its first yield? And we certainly don't have that much time, because in the next 2 years, we're talking about quantum computing, singularity, the explosion of GenAI to reach new heights by the time ChatGPT gets to version 6 and 7, and Anthropic and everything else. We are on a collision course, and the freight train is running, and the time is now to bring this scenario to people. That governance, you can pay me now or you can pay me later, like that old commercial for those of us showing our age.
Indeed.
So the stewardship spectrum moves from delegate, where AI decides but humans remain in the loop or informed, to collaborate, where human and AI deliberate together in a partnership, to authorize, where the humans decide with AI informing what the actual choice is. And overarching everything is disclose, that transparency, where the user always knows which mode is active and has the standing capability to challenge it and reverse it or modify it. Notice what shifts here. The variability is not efficiency, which is what a lot of people talk about in GenAI, how much time it can save, how much, but that leads us down sometimes a path where we begin to get lazy. And as individuals who use GenAI, we may forget, no, we still have responsibilities to check AI at every interval. Stewardship means you never surrender that final authority to a system you cannot interrogate. And it aligns with the identification frameworks that are already now beginning to emerge in the field, GAI 1, GAI 2, and similar standards, where disclosure isn't an afterthought. It becomes the baseline for establishing trust. Let's talk about 3 kind of specific scenarios here. One beginning with customer service. We've all been exposed to chatbots or AI automation in that space. So you delegate the initial triage, maybe the top level routine password resets, things of that nature, the kind of the 80-20 rule, that first line, or level 1, they call it in help desk. But you collaborate on the other 20%, which is complaint handling, which is a lot more subjective, where AI can perhaps kind of provide some kind of initial response to, but clearly a human needs to be in that loop so that the necessary language is succinct in conveying how to appropriately respond. And you disclose clearly at conversation start that, hey, this is a bot. This is a visible escalation path that exists to a human if you don't get it from the bot rather. And we're going to be collegial and very accommodating in that sense. What kind of annoys me is, frankly, we all get tons of bots calls now that are clearly AI. And that's not what upsets me. What upsets me is that they don't announce them as an AI generated bot call. Now, if I was going to use one of these applications for that purpose, first words out of your mouth, not my mouth, but out of the bot's mouth, should be, I am an AI assistant here to help. And then from there, that sets the tone. Because if you don't tell a person that it's an AI bot, they're going to figure it out in 30 seconds and hang up the phone, because they're going to feel violated, which they are. It's disingenuous not to announce up front that you're talking to a bot. And it's curious because 80% of people would rather talk to a bot in a customer service scenario than an outsourced resource that may not understand the culture, the syntax of the person that they're even talking to. So people prefer to speak to a bot when they know it's a bot. So this isn't hypothetical, and this is deployable right now, Monday morning, fully aligned with emerging bot identification frameworks. They're out there. We all know this. We get inundated with bot calls. Let's take another look at another scenario in the space of content generation. Now, all of us use AI, GenAI, invariably to generate content. I use it for blog posts, my Substack posts, social media, all of that. But those of us who've been around the block a bit on this, yeah, we know we have to train the GenAI through who its audience is, our ideal customer avatar. We also train through custom instructions, through memory, through a whole host of other, nowadays, the ability to integrate with your Google Drive and otherwise to build really comprehensive context about who you are, what your voice is, what your values are. All of that gets distilled into that capability in content generation. Is everybody doing this? I don't know. I can't speak for it. I've just been in a AI digital marketing mastermind for 3 years, where that has been instilled in me, and as being part of the success equation as far as that goes. So marketing content follows the same arc as we discussed in the first example. Delegate social variants like low risk. Collaborate on white paper drafting to, again, ensure that the citations, even if you're using a RAG, are spot on. I know in the legal field where I consult, there's been over 1,000 cases of falsified citations, hallucinated citations being introduced in court trials because of lazy attorneys, mostly associates, who use ChatGPT or whatever GenAI product to do the research. And we know that GenAI is designed to hallucinate. It's designed to give you what you want, not what you need, or not even in some cases what you're asking for specifically.
Those case hallucinations weren't without consequence, were they?
No. In some cases, lawyers got disbarred. Judges issued fines, contempt of court. And these days, it's incumbent now on both sides of the equation, both counsels, to be able to certify that the opposing counsel is not introducing falsified information, or they can be liable on their own side in legal proceedings. So the final authorization has to always be a human in the loop. And the funny thing is, look, lawyers make mistakes, but partners are always there to catch the mistakes that their associates make. For some reason, when AI is introduced, there's this unrealistic expectation that AI is perfect. Just because it's fast, it has an IQ of 150 and can do incredible things in a short amount of time. But prompting isn't king, context is king. So you have to train it, but you never give up certifying what comes back if you're using it, certainly in a legal environment. Disclosure via watermark if it's AI produced in the metadata, indicating to the world where it came from as a source, is also aligned with GAI 1 and GAI 2 specifications. The disclosure doesn't weaken your brand. It demonstrates the integrity that builds lasting trust. And that's a statement that sits a lot with me, because many people have kind of flipped that on its end, that we don't have to disclose in the AI world. AI does such a great job of producing the content and the information we want. It makes us look good. So why on earth would I disclose that I'm using AI to generate my content? That's the kind of hubris I think we can no longer afford in this world. Let's talk about the scenario number 3. which is high-level decision support. You know, for high stakes decisions in the boardrooms, in credit, legal, medical, banking. Now we shift left on the spectrum. No delegation. Collaboration provides risk scores and scenarios. You know, AI can tell you what probability of accuracy its results are. Just ask it. And if you don't believe it, then go the multimodal route. Ask ChatGPT to check Claude's work, or Gemini to check Claude's work, or ChatGPT's work, etc. Authorization rests in the human loan officer with documented rationale. And disclosure ensures that the customer knows AI informed the evaluation with the opportunity to contest if they don't believe in the results. No different really than a human. How many times do we have arguments with underwriters, right, when we're talking about insurance applications, for example? Human accountability. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Since you're talking about accountability resides with a human, was there, and am I potentially hallucinating, or was there a case recently that was decided in court that AI cannot be held accountable and it's always the human that has to be held accountable?
Absolutely, because AI is, we often talk of AI as an informed tool that lifts all of us up in terms of what we're able to do. But you're right, John, that is a watershed case that still reminds us, in the end, the humans are responsible and accountable if AI messes up. And we've seen that play out all over the courtroom. Anyone who says, "Oh, blame the AI," and unfortunately, John, you mentioned a good point. There's a lot of people out there that kind of take that approach, but it's the same people that take that approach of blaming the downstream worker if they're at a high management level, instead of taking the accountability themselves. So it's not so much a technology instance, it's more of a human instance where, you know, we're in a world today where accountability is in short supply. And we see that play out in all kinds of boardrooms, political scenarios, and so forth. Well, we can't afford to have that in the AI space. So thank you. That's a great question. So again, the stewardship spectrum isn't about avoiding AI. That's ridiculous. And AI now is moving at a pace and at a rate where the next 2 years, if you thought 2025 was fast, 2026 will be faster. We'll have autonomous agents all over the place. OpenClaw is the single fastest growing company in history. And what does that tell you? Now owned by OpenAI. So that acceleration is only going to continue. Not owned by, but they hired the guy who created OpenClaw. And as I said earlier, yeah, quantum computing, autonomous agents, the incredible increase in capabilities of all GenAI products. Google just released something just today where they've been able to speed up or reduce the memory consumption by a factor of 8 times. OpenAI and Anthropic will be in the same race to that level of computing power and efficiency. So that human sovereignty is precious and gold for us. So I will now turn it back over to Chris, who will forge ahead on the 3-point trust gap assessment.
Thank you, Richard. One of the things that's so critical here, and I'll start to see if I can land our high concept cloud level plane here, because as Richard pointed out, there are various ways you can look at whatever business you're in, whatever service portfolio you're offering. If you're involving AI, there's a way to be more intentional about this. And we want to make sure that this isn't some abstract theory for everybody on this call and even colleagues you may share this with. At Cognify, we have built frameworks, tooling, services specifically for SMBs caught in this gap. The 58% who've adopted AI, but the 65% who worry about regulatory patchwork. Here now, I do want to share and make an offer for everybody here. I want to take 3 AIFA member companies through a 30-day diagnostic, not because we need leads, because we need allies who believe AI should serve human flourishing, not replace it. The 3-point trust gap assessment examines your epistemic gaps, where customers lose the ability to know they're interacting with AI. Your stewardship gaps, what decisions you've automated that should require human authorization, and your accountability gaps, where vendors have offloaded liability to you without transparency. While we're offering a 1-page pro-human AI roadmap, not a compliance checklist, but a stewardship covenant mapping how to deploy AI with wisdom and intentionality. That being said, part of the boundaries around this ask is not out of scarcity, but it's out of purposefulness. Because we've only got capacity to run 3 of these assessments in the next 30 days, not 50, 3. Because if we're going to lead with truth, let's start by being honest about our own bandwidth. Stewardship requires presence, not scale. 3 slots, 30 days, for those aligned with the transparency principles that we share with AIFA. It's not about selling software. It's about diagnosing whether you're operating as a pro-human company or whether or not you've been swept up in this race to replace human judgment with invisible automation. So as we start to really land this plane, perhaps going final approach, I want to give a brief final introduction to, actually, well, I guess we really did that at the top. Just wanted to say, again, I am Chris with Cognify Solutions, part of Nexus Systems. Richard Schreiber, he is my brand VP and close partner. And want to point out another little project you can ask us about in the Q&A called securejustice.ai. We can definitely answer additional questions about that shortly as well. Now, as we start to close here, I want to remind everybody here about the imperative that integrity has, all right? Because right now, we're standing at a crossroads, not just folks here, but really all of us. If I have the risk of running back up into the clouds, I dare say all of society right now, we're at a crossroads where old ways are being burned away. The scarcity loops of the past were just the fire preparing the soil for something greater now. When your successors stand on the platform you built, the businesses you built, the professions you built, let them stand on the foundation of absolute integrity. Not because we fear the technology, but we refuse to let it obscure the truth. Frameworks out there, like the ones AIFA is working on, exist because transparency is non-negotiable for a free society. Identification standards are not regulatory nuisances. That, along with other things, are part of a technical defense of human epistemic rights. That is man's right to know. Build vineyards, not just tools. Build stewardship, not just governance. Build truth. We're about to have a Q&A section, but if you want to take a quick screenshot, please feel free to get in touch. There's a QR code that'll take you to our contact us page. There's an email address there. Please feel free to drop us a line. If you're interested in that assessment, just go ahead and at least drop it in the subject. The email is info@cognifysolutions.ai. And just put in that subject AIFA Trust Gap Assessment, referencing just the educational session today. All right. So let's build AI systems in transparency, accountability, and human agency. Are there any questions?
Actually, before we start the question Q&A, I want to thank you for framing this as not as a governance and a compliance, because every time you have a client or you talk to somebody and you're talking about governance and compliance, the view that they have in their head is money flying out the window with no value to it. And I think framing it as stewardship of your business, stewardship of the integrity of your business, I think it's very, very powerful. And I wanted to make that comment before anybody jumped in and started asking questions.
John, I appreciate that deeply. That is absolutely signifying part and parcel of where we want to go, and one of the reasons why we're starting to adapt that messaging. Really, is not governance for so many people feels like a tick the box. This is deeper and more intentional and more important.
Yeah, and involving human spirit, and really mindset and training, because AI is the most influential agent in our lifetime, right? We've seen that, but we've also know human nature. Human nature is to avoid what we don't understand, castigate what we don't understand. And when we see the power of AI, the question is, do we respect that power? Just like they say, you got to respect Mother Earth, you got to respect the ocean. We have to respect AI in the same manner. And that's where this stewardship concept really hits home, that we all have to do our part and avoid the tendency we have to get lazy and to outsource control of what we really need to be on top of ourselves. And it challenges us really to also come up with ways using management information. I think that the necessity for dashboard reporting and having KPIs in place to convert that black box to a transparent box, to empower people to be able to execute their stewardship is really, I think, the next wave that Chris and I are really happy to try to steer along, and just so grateful to be part of this collective, because we know you guys are all very much in that direction as well.
Here, here.
Yeah, thank you guys. SJ, you have a question? I'm going to lower your hand.
I'm actually more aligned with you on this one, John. This is more of a statement. So I'm sort of coming in second, the silver medal a month late here. But I appreciated the inclusion, the framing of this around stewardship. It's one of my favorite words. Covenant ties very much into that in my view. And I think while these are older concepts, and I am a known futurist, and obviously AI and all of its many pieces, including digital twins and agents, are future trends as opposed to reliving the past when stewardship and covenants were talked about more often. Suffice to say, I think it's a great melding of the past and the future in the present. So I thought that was very well done, gentlemen, and thank you for including that. And I just felt like it was worth a shout out, since John, you and I sometimes share the same brain anyway.
We greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Indeed. SJ, I appreciate you so much. First off, thank you for being here and being able to make it, my friend. But indeed, I think that brain cell might also be shared by a number of us. It's just one of those things that sometimes to go and really reach into the future, you really do have to look on what has stood so strongly in the past. And again, governance, not poo-pooing that concept, because that's important and critical, but really just to operationalize that and give that some real meaning, because governance is the nature of how we tend to how we want to show up for laws and regulations and things that affect us. Governance is how we want to show up for how we choose to adhere to things internally. And that's fantastic, so well and good. That is critical. That's important. You know, any activity without a thought of how we're going to align to the guardrails we need to be in. If you're not thinking about that, you're just going to be bouncing around off those guardrails all day long, or maybe even off the cliff. Stewardship, however, really goes down into how do we become really intentional? How do we linken that to our core tenets, our core covenants? How do we linken this to something we can grow? How can we linken this to something that has what's the word I'm looking for? Not just staying power, but has thank you. That's an excellent word. But has longevity. And that is really a lot more, I think, key to the moment we're in right now.
And I think in the stewardship place, if I could just draw an analogy, where obviously all of us in this room are familiar with cybersecurity. But we also know from that example that stewardship is a must. Because until organizations began to spend the time and the money and the effort to educate employees about what a phishing email is, what a Trojan horse is, that you must use multi-factor authentication in anything and everything that you do. You know, that again, that's not just a checklist of line items that you process through on paper. That's real people having to shift their mindset away from, I can't open this email because it looks like spam, but worse, it could be a phishing email. It's got an attachment. It's coming from an email address that seems totally fake. We need to address and attack AI governance on a personal level with the same veracity that most organizations have done from a cybersecurity perspective. And those that haven't are the ones that pay the price. And the same thing will happen if those are the same organizations that don't apply the same level of stewardship to AI governance.
All right. So I know. Go ahead, John.
You guys talked about the framework that we're creating with AIFA, and if you guys don't mind, let me give Todd a minute or two to talk about that and to talk about the confluence of the ideas that came to bear and the concepts that we've been discussing in this.
Here, please.
Yeah, that's awesome, John. Thanks. And thank you, Richard and Chris. That's we're talking about a lot of shared brain cells, and fortunately, the few ones that I have left from the 80s or after the 80s are able to be applied to this moment, which is great. What really stuck out to me is the entire concept of trust, which I think you guys have really brought home, and I very much appreciate your framework for development of trust, which I think is a great complement to the framework that we put together for AIFA, which is called Air Navigator, which most of you are familiar with. It's a 4-component family framework, very similar to what you would find from ISACA or from Enterprise Data Management Association, that has a series of topics and questions that are associated with those topics within each one of those component families, one of which is specifically called trusted. So there are multiple components within the component family that get down to fairness, bias detection, mitigation, accountability, transparency, etc. But it is very involved. It's a very intense question and answer, providing evidence, trying to understand the strength of the evidence that's provided and scoring it on a 5-point scale. So what Cognify has put together is a tremendous complement to to the framework that that is AIFA that is put together by Paperkite. That I think lends itself very well, or they complement each other very well to get down to trust. I have a couple of other perspectives on the entire trust issue, or I don't know how else to put it, but the way that I really appreciated that you included Pew Research. There are a couple of other studies that I would love to bring to Chris and Rich, especially from the Department of Labor Statistics on trust, that are a different topic or a different discussion for a different time. But it adds a different dimension that I think can be rolled in very well with an additional framework that we can talk about some other time. Just a heads up, that's coming, guys. So look forward to that. So thanks for giving me a moment for
thank you.
that reflection, John.
No, thank you. I actually have a question for for Chris and Richard. AI seems to be in a position where, and you mentioned cybersecurity, where cybersecurity was 10 years ago, or even 15 years ago, where people are wondering, why do we even need this thing? It's just an annoyance. In practice, as you're dealing with different clients, what kind of education do you go through to help them go from WTF to yes, we can?
Well, I'd say a lot of those conversations are framed, I should say, as, well, let's look at some of the blind sides and red team this, Let's consider, let's actually talk out some of those, what would happen if, and show just how thin the line is between what if and what's happening today. It's one of the things that I try to not play it as, if you don't do this, bad things will happen to you. But it's still illustrative. It's one of the things cybersecurity was able to do in those intervening years. Mostly by saying, like, look, this can happen. Look, we've run these, we have pen tests, we have reports, like you have vulnerabilities, you're open. And folks who are willing, that's usually the last line of persuasion you can get to, which works a great deal before somebody ends up calling you a week, a month, a year later and said, yeah, that thing we talked about, it happened. What do we do? It's like, well, I don't have a time machine, but let's talk about how to put the fire out now.
Yeah, I agree totally with Chris. I think a lot of it, and you probably know this as well, Todd, lies within the kind of assessment questioning that you do up front with the client, because it's more important for them to discover through the questioning where that triggers kind of some internal thought process on their end than it is to come top down and belabor them with all these statistics and all these what ifs and so forth, which may not really penetrate. So, we in our initial discussions and assessments and evaluation during that discovery period, we like to kind of let the client ease in and kind of, through our questioning, discover for themselves why they really should consider governance. And certainly the cyber examples are good ones. Just as any, cyber's an insurance policy, AI governance an insurance policy. You take it for granted that you have it on your automobile. Why? You get in an accident and it can cost you hundreds of thousands. Why wouldn't you take the same approach to your business? It's kind of curious. I know Todd has his hand up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Lower. Have you been able to leverage, just like, quick bullet points from the OWASP top 10 for generative AI to kind of make the point to clients. I tried to integrate as many of those as possible into Air Navigator without being repetitive or redundant or a thief, basically. Stealing intellectual property.
No, that's an excellent question. That becomes more interesting. We've had a little bit more luck having those with folks who are developing those models, who are directly implementing those. And truthfully, they're kind of two cohorts that we're looking at, that we really want to have conversations with, really everybody, of course. But those who are implementing these, and those who are developing them. Because it's hard to really support a lot of folks who are implementing them if the folks who are sitting down developing these, who are working out these prompts, who are selecting these models, who are changing the parameters in models, doing this fine tuning, aren't sitting down and doing the red teaming of their own, aren't sitting down and doing testing prompt injection, aren't sitting down and really understanding the data exfiltration that these models could have, or the poisoning of the data sets for these models. So it's part of the conversation. I don't know that I would say it's moved the needle a lot, but it helps color it and lets us go deeper.
Yeah. I mean, there are plenty of use cases out there. We cited those in legal, over 1,000 instances of falsified citations brought into court. There are other examples, that we can cite as well. But there's definitely a human element here, and an educational one, just as there was in cyber, and just as there really is in any scenario where you have to safeguard your business with a lot of intentionality around the security of all the aspects. And it's really an end-to-end process. We're finding we just again created a more of an end-to-end, looking at infosec, cyber, AI governance, and guardrails, and the way that agentic or AI solutions, automation solutions, are deployed, because we know the stats, right? 60 to 70% of them fail because either the use cases aren't accurate, or the solutions were not deployed capably or safely. And so it's, again, this is not just looking at the slice of the pie of, all right, you're here, this is what you need to apply retroactively. It's more from the ground up, and it's more getting people to think that it's an incredibly powerful tool, but you don't put it on autopilot ever. And that's really where it starts. Someone has their hand up.
Yeah, I think we'll see if we can squeeze another question in there.
Yeah, I think we have 2 more minutes left, so to be respectful of everybody's time. SJ.
Yeah, I was looking at that, and I said I think I could sneak this in. So we happen to be on the slide right now that was discussed earlier, and it was also since referenced from Pew. I was curious if either of you gentlemen have been tapping into either Gallup or Barna, which also do similar work.
There are a great number of different studies and polls going on out there. I can't recall seeing anything fresh off the top of my head, but is there something you've seen out there you'd love to share?
Yeah, please.
Not any one specific thing. However, I just thought I'd toss it out there because I think every single one of us, as we wrap up today, would acknowledge easily that we are awash in information and data sources, and it's just a matter of doing our best to corral them, and it's a bunch of cats going 18 directions, right? So
yeah,
guys, it's 12:30, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and I want to thank you, Chris and Richard, for being part of AIFA, for allowing us to be part of Cognify, for bringing this together. I love the concept, what you guys talked about, and If you'd like us to share the slide before this one, please email that to me, and we're happy to share that with our AIFA membership in the next newsletter that probably goes out next week, I think. So people will be able to follow through on that. And I appreciate your time. I appreciate you doing all this, and hopefully we'll have more conversations coming up. So thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Well done.
Thank you.
Listen, John, thank you.
Thank
all
you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
All right, Chris.
No, our pleasure. Same thought. So sharing the same brain cell.
Take care.
Have a blessed day, everyone.